Well, how did Rally Barbados? How do you guys pull off these kind of events? Like King of the Hill. It cannot be easy to put together something like this.
No, Sol Rally Barbados is very much a collaborative effort. We start. Well, now it appears we actually don't stop. I think we had roughly about 4 to 6 weeks break last year, and from then on it has been planning right through. Initially what we do is we kind of have a pretty critical look at the event we just had. So we have lots of debriefing meetings and try and gauge what it is that we did well, what it is that we did wrong, what we need to improve on, so on and so forth. And then from very early we go into looking to see from an organizational perspective what needs to change, and that usually happens towards the end of summer, which would have happened last year, August, September. And then from a club perspective, we go into looking at what our partners will be doing, how we can bring people on board, how we can give them more added value. So from a sponsor's perspective, that's actually the first thing we start on. And we kind of get that down pat. We have a look at where they are, what can be done with that. Obviously, at the same time, there are lots of other club issues going on that we, events that we're currently having to run and so on. But Sol Rally Barbados in particular is something that we start usually about 9 to 10 months in advance of the event. We've been having weekly meetings for the last, bi-weekly meetings for the last 2 months, and those are going to continue apace now for the next month or so, and then they'll go to weekly meetings. And basically how the structure is that we have a very large organizing committee which comprises of maybe 22, 26 key individuals, and that combined with our stage commanders, which are very important to the event. And then there are a number of people that deal with the individual things within the event itself. And then we have basically what we call a steering committee, which is called the Gang of Six, which is myself, Barry Gale, who's the chairman of the rally, Imara Cummins, who keeps us all in check, Mark Hamilton, he and I actually do most of the work to do with sponsors and so on. We're hoping to bring on Craig Yearwood, who's a former competitor, navigator for Jeff Noel, who's the club chairman. He's going to assist me with stage preparation and planning, which is a huge issue, which is combined with safety. And then John Seeley, who is president of the club, he actually also is in charge and helps us with safety issues on the event. So we have this kind of umbrella group that meets very regularly, and then we have this kind of larger group of people who all assist in several different things, and it's very much a collaborative effort. There is no way that even 2 or 3 of us can consider putting on an event of this size. The event now costs over $500,000 to put on. This year we're supposed to have a maximum entry of 30 overseas entries from Europe. We're currently near, I think, 34 or 35. Wow. This is from Europe alone. Local entries obviously looking fantastic, and there's no reason this year why we wouldn't actually go right beyond.
Well, you guys are known for breaking records when it comes to getting more entries, right? How do you guys actually market to these guys from overseas of the actual event?
Well, we've gotten considerable assistance over the last couple of years, in particular from both the BTA and Tourism Development Corporation, TDC. And the TDC have been instrumental in assisting us in putting together really amazing marketing packages which we've done overseas. Last year we had a fantastic one which we based in England and Ireland primarily, but in Ireland what we did was we actually gave away a trip for 2 marshals, which again was assisted by the TDC and some of our other corporate partners. And those 2 marshals came free of charge, stayed 2 weeks, flights, accommodation basically, and we obviously showed them the best possible time we can. And they just went back and spread the word. I mean, these are 2 guys that basically the criteria for entering was that you just needed to be a marshal on the Circuit of Ireland, which at the time was around the IRC. And basically, once you signed on as a marshal, you automatically entered. And these 2 guys literally pulled out of a hat by Andreas Mikkelsen of all people, but they were pulled out of a hat. And they were called and said, brothers, you've won a trip to the Caribbean to come and see this event. So I think those type of promotional efforts, obviously it's an 800 strong martial body, and that spread the word within Ireland. Right. To the point whereby this year, it's my understanding that there's actually a completely independent group of spectators coming out just to watch the event. These are not even competitors now. Wow. These are just spectators.
These are from Europe or just Ireland?
This is actually from Ireland.
Wow.
So
as you say, Ireland is one of the biggest.
Ireland at the moment, I mean, we're likely to see over 10 competitive entries from Ireland this year. And that amounts to, you're talking 10 entries, that's 2 competitors each car, plus another 3 or 4 people with each team. you're talking close to 75 to 100 people just from those 10 entries. And that definitely that demographic, that country and that group, and I mean the island is rallying mad, and it always has been, I mean, for years. But it's not just there. We're obviously targeting Caribbean as well. We are Caribbean people, and the West Indies is very much, you know, we know, and you guys know that guys come from Trinidad in droves come watch the event for the weekend. We have a good following from Jamaica. The guys come across Jamaica. They've got some top flight drivers. Jeff Panning, we expect to come back this year. Big Ambada, absolutely. And we want to try and focus on some of those regional markets as well, and try and get guys, you know, people to come across, not just to compete, but also just come across, have a fantastic weekend, watch Sol Rally Barbados, you know, participate.
On Adrenaline Sun, we have a huge following from the whole Caribbean, you know, and they're always asking what's going on. But you guys are really good on, you know, sending us our press releases and updating us, right? And that brings me to my other question. I mean, this is a massive event, and I know how organized you guys are, but you have to have some challenges in there, man. Like,
huge challenges.
So what are some of those challenges that you guys face?
We don't have enough time, to be quite honest. But you know, one of the things, for instance, is that we've set the route already for this year.
Right.
And people think, you know, people tell us, well, you know, why are you using longer stages, and why don't you do this, why don't you do that? You know, it really is a sum of its parts, and at the end of the day, it is a compromise, and it's a balancing act. And there are a couple of key things that we need to take into consideration. First and foremost, it's going to be safety. Second is going to be definitely how we interact and how we can minimize the impact on residents and the traveling public at large. So, you know, there's small things that we look into. For instance, we might want to run a stage that, you know, may pass a church, let's say. We won't run that stage on Sunday if in fact church is in service. So we'll look to try and put that stage in on Saturday and route around that. So that's like one small item. Then, for instance, there's like issues to do with the stages themselves and the traffic situations. Like, when are the buses most likely to come through this stage? Is it going to be on Saturday morning? Is it Saturday afternoon? And then in terms of the routes themselves, they need to be relatively compact, so we minimize the transit times between the stages. Then it needs to be bigger service areas that we can put in place. So if you have 3 stages in the north, the last thing you want to be doing is driving to a parking lot by Sky Mall, for instance, to service your car. Yeah, it's going to take you 45 minutes to get here, 40 minutes to get back up. So we now need to find an area where we can service effectively what might be 110 entries with 3 vehicles each, talking 400-500 vehicles in one space. So, as I said, there are a number of things that go into that, and we've set it. We think we have a great route this year. As I said, we planned it. Let me say that. Clive Howell, who's our chief route setter, he now has the task of going out and mapping it all and measuring it and timing the whole thing. But at the moment, we're looking forward to it. I think we have a route this year from a competitive perspective, which you guys are going to find very, very challenging.
Yeah, well, you guys are really organized. Even some of these things I didn't know. You just informed me about. But I know it could be a challenge as well. I mean, such a big event and all that preparation. But everything you said earlier, when it comes down to safety, I know that's like a big priority on
the biggest priority.
Yeah. So how do you guys deal with that?
Well, safety, you know, again, it's been a learning experience for me as well, and we've moved on so much as a club. You know, even with the last 10 years in relation to safety, both for the competitors, which obviously is not to be taken for granted now, but we have such stringent safety measures in terms of competing. And I know you've had some competitors on your program, you know, so far this year, and that's one thing that the public just don't, you know, generally kind of, you know, they see guys walk around in fireproof suits and helmets on, and they kind of think, yeah, well, that's what you need to compete. It's not you need to compete. It's, you need to be in that situation. And as a former competitor myself, it's one of those things I like to tell people, you know, if you think that driving above the speed limit and driving reckless on a normal road day is acceptable, it's not. And then you understand that as a competitor, your road is closed, so there's no one else on your road. You then have to wear fireproof overalls. You have to wear proper shoes. You've got to wear helmets that have a certain, there are fire extinguishers in your cars. There are full harness seat belts that have to be a certain kind of requirement. There are seats that have to be a certain kind of requirement. And then there are roll cages all around you. Then you're allowed to drive quickly. You kind of think to yourself, well, hold on a minute. If these people are allowed to drive quickly in this completely controlled environment, why on earth would I even think of driving like a lunatic on the road outside of this environment. And of
Right.
course, when you get people to understand that from a road safety perspective, you know, and that I think is the first safety aspect, and that's a competitor's thing.
Right.
I think then from a spectators and an organizational capacity, we've had to look to a whole set of other things over the last years as the rallies generally in motorsport in general. It's not just the rally club, it's rallying in general, it's circuit racing. With the popularity of the sport has increased, we've seen increased sponsor participation and partners come on, but as well as that, it's increased participation from a spectator perspective. So we've seen bigger crowds on the event, which have been, you know, to be quite honest, more difficult to manage, but they've come to see the sport, they like the sport because it's exciting and, you know, there's a lot of action going on, etc., etc. And dealing with that as a safety issue has been challenging, but it's been rewarding that we've taken some huge steps forward. And this year, for instance, the last couple of years, you know, we work very closely with the guy in charge of our chief medical is Brian Charles, who was the head of accident emergency at QEH, and he's in charge of our kind of medical emergency stuff. And you know, we met with him last year before the event, and he also is very kind of au fait and understands in terms of emergency procedures on the island and what has to happen in terms of certain casualty situations. And so we buy into all that. We have a kind of emergency plan for the event, for stages.
Right.
Besides, obviously, marshals being trained themselves and having obviously stuff, and every stage so on has ambulances on each stage. We know we have 2 or 3 roving ambulances, and we've upgraded, for instance, the medical personnel that are in those ambulances on Brian's advice. So there's a lot. That's an entire that's an entire event itself.
Yeah.
That entire thing is a whole nother kettle of fish.
Right.
And this year we're looking to step it up again. We've just received some amazing training from 2 officials from the Motorsport Association in England, the MSA, which is organised by the BMF, which is the governing body for motorsport in the island.
Right.
And they basically did an entire weekend of safety training, and that was incredibly instructive, really instructive.
So Neil, you were telling me earlier about the competitors. What can we expect? And will Mr. Paul Bird be back?
I would be surprised if Mr. Bird does not return to defend his title. Obviously, as Bajans,
But there's some rumors going around.
there are a lot of rumors around. But, you know, as Bajans and West Indians, we don't like anybody coming about here
Right.
and beating us.
Right.
So I know the fellas, they actually just want to see him come back so they can
Beat him. Oh.
They don't want to see him come back to do anything else. They want to see him come back so we can beat him.
Right.
And I know that Roger Skeet obviously has to be considered a front runner again. You know, he has to be. Paul Bourne, I think, is sharper than ever. He had a great end to the season last year, and I genuinely believe that he needs to be someone you've got to look at for this year. Yes, and then there's Mr. Bird. You know, at the end of the day, yep, defending champion. I've heard some rumors concerning his car. I'm not sure if we'll see a Focus back here. We may actually see a Fiesta, but at the moment, that is rumors. We've not seen a current flight WRC car on the island as yet, which is the new 1600 WRC cars, which have been proved in terms of times and so on overseas to be more than a match for what the guys currently use here, which are 2-liter versions. And certainly the pace of the current crop of WRC cars, I mean, at the moment Rally Sweden's on, and I think Sebastian Ogier went to front yesterday and has a good half minute over Sebastian Loeb in one of these new VW Polo WRCs. And these are 600 cars which are honestly producing some astonishing times. But Birdman, I don't know.
You might be seeing that.
I
Sol Rally
believe
Barbados
that I
2013.
suspect that man may have to bring a bigger weapon to deal with what he has to deal with from a local perspective. Yeah.
Do you expect any surprises?
I think there are going to be a few surprises. I know there are going to be a few surprises.
Can you share?
I can't. I'm afraid. I would get drawn and quartered by one of our media guys, Robin Bradford, if I divulge too much at this stage. And to be quite honest with you, at this stage as well, there is stuff that's still up in the air. I mean, there are guys who have entered, who some just pull out. So I mean, to make any kind of rash, comments or announcement at this stage would be remiss of me. Plus, I get done for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll probably get you later. So, Neil, I want to thank you for coming through today. Like, I learned some stuff I didn't know, especially when it came. I know it was organized, but the amounts of work you guys have to put in. Like, shout out to the Barbados Rally Club. You guys do an awesome job here. It's incredible what you guys do. But I don't know. You want to add a little something?
Well, I mean, in terms of our sponsors, definitely we couldn't do it without them. We very much view them nowadays as, fortunately, the sport for us has gone past a charity stage, and we know we have partners that see a genuine return on their investment in participating and sponsoring events, which is a fantastic position to be in, to be quite honest. So yeah, I mean, Sol, Automotive Art, Banks Holdings, Virgin Atlantic, Chefette. You know, we've got a number of obviously car dealers which are involved. Simpson Motors for sure. NASCO, who sponsored traditionally one of our Mad Dogs events. Or the BTA, the TDC, the BHTA. All of these people are absolutely instrumental. And then we have now our partners on the ground which have been fantastic over the years. Stouts Car Rentals. You caught me on the hop here. You caught me on the hop.
Too much.
But honestly, if I miss any, I have to apologize. Scotiabank obviously have come on and signed up this year, which has been fantastic for a multi-year deal. Line, who have become an indispensable partner in terms of our communications on the event, and that is a bit of an unsung story there. And one of these days, I'll have to try and convince them to put out more of a press release, because I know sometimes they take some licks, and I personally think some of it is a bit undue. They have been an indispensable partner in helping us with communications on the event, timings and results and so on. We're going to step that up a notch again this year. But yeah, honestly, all of our partners, and they're not, you know, it's not all about the sponsors of the events per se either. The sponsors of the individual competitors are just as important. And one of the things that we've liked to put across to all these sponsor meetings that we've had over the last 2 or 3 months is, listen, if you're interested in getting involved in an event per se, you need to also get involved as to try and back a competitor or participant. It's just as important, and it is for any sport. The last thing you want to see is with surfing, cycling, whatever it is, football. You know, you've got think guys backing teams and whatnot. You need to back the individual as well. It's just as important.
Yes. So thanks again, Neil. Indian.
Yeah.
Thank you, man.
King of the Hill.
King of the Hill.
That's right.
Yeah.